So welcome to Listen, Love, Connect. While me and Somi will be talking about mental health versus mental wellness versus mental illness, because there is a difference. So I am going to invite her. So give me 1 second. I have invited her. Hello, everybody. Somi will be coming on. Hi, Somi.
Hello. How are you?
Good. How are you? Sorry, I'm putting up my volume because I can't hear.
Oh, okay.
Oh, there we go. Now I can hear.
You look fantabulous.
Thank you very much. I'm wearing this shirt.
It looks great. You want to tell the audience what you sent me regarding that shirt?
So I saw this shirt. I'll give you a little look at Target, and it reminded me of someone because of how she's very calm, very beautiful inside and out, and it just reminded me of her. And to be honest, I was scared to get it, and I texted her. I'm like, "Is this offensive? I don't want to offend you and stuff like that." She's like, "No, this is fine. You're fine." And I'm like, "Okay." But yes, it reminds me of Somi, so Somi's with me all the time.
Aw, that touched my heart. But I do want to point out that it's just you reaching out to ask that question and to get clarification, because a lot of times people don't ask, they want to honor somebody or, do something to kind of appreciate somebody else, but they don't kind of verify, like, do you find this,
Right.
like,
Okay.
do you appreciate that, or would it be offensive? So it's not offensive at all. I think it's dope.
Like it.
So today we are, like Savannah said, we are talking mental illness, mental health, mental wellness, and the difference.
Yes. Because a lot
So
of people think they're intertwined or they're the same, and it's just interchangeable words.
exactly. And I don't remember how this came up with us, but I know that it did. Do you remember?
Yes. So I remember when I was first, I'm sorry, I'm getting a ton of texts if you hear that. So I remember it was mental health awareness.
Mm-hmm.
I believe in 2019, it was a month, and I wrote a post about it. And I think I included in it schizophrenia and stuff because I thought mental health and mental illness were intertwined. When I read you the post and all that, you said that you told me good job and all that, but you told me that there was a difference,
Right.
which intrigued me. And over time, I keep you were teaching me the difference between mental health and mental illness. And then earlier, is it this year or last year, you introduced the word mental wellness, which
Yes.
was different from mental health.
Correct. So if we, just kind of getting right into it. So mental illness has to do with the fact that emotionally, behaviorally, and from a thinking perspective, your cognition, mental, that there is some level of, well, not some level, well, varying levels of distress, dysfunction, um, and there are issues, in a clinical term, we call it, somebody's exhibiting maladaptive behaviors. So maladaptive, mal meaning bad, or, kind of a dysfunction, adaptive, obviously meaning that you're okay. So from a mental illness standpoint, that's what that means. It's like when an individual has dysfunctions emotionally, in their mind, as well as behavioral. And it could be one of those three, or it could be one of two of the three, or it could be all three. And I want to say there are over like 200 diagnoses from,
Okay.
when you talk about the DSM and diagnosing mental disorders, which that's another conversation that we have to get into about
Yes.
some of the labels that we have. But for the
Yes. I think
sake
that's an
of
important
what,
topic.
Right. What, for the sake of what we're talking about, that's what mental illness is. And the other thing with mental illness and the difference with mental health is that um, with mental illness, there's, in order for you to be diagnosed with a mental illness, you have to be exhibiting quite a lot of times, at least 2 weeks. So whatever the emotions, the thinking process, the behavior patterns, they need to be consistently present for about 2 weeks for you to get a diagnosis of depression, anxiety, PTSD, schizophrenia, whatever the case may be. Now, when we talk about mental health, a lot of times what people are talking about, or the focus is really the absence of the mental illness, which is not all encompassing as a definition, because you may not be mentally healthy, but you may not have a mental illness.
So, like, for example, if you're in a job and it's stressful, you could be having a mental health issue, or I don't know what this
Challenge,
is.
struggles,
Okay.
yes. And that's a great example, Savannah, because a lot of times people that are not mentally health, it has to do with external or internal stressors. So let's say somebody loses their job,
Yes.
okay? Especially now with COVID, once COVID hit, a lot of people lost jobs. And it triggered a lot of mental health issues, but didn't mean that they were having mental illness. So they weren't like mentally ill. They were just, at that point, there was an external stressor, the loss of job, that triggered some distress or dysfunction emotionally in their thought process and in their behavior patterns. Okay. Now, not being mentally healthy, when it prolongs, then shifts into mental illness.
Right.
But you can, like I said, you can have a moment of where you're not mentally healthy, but you're not mentally ill. And I think a lot of people are quick to diagnose themselves. So
Yes.
everyone these days is very quick to diagnose themselves. Go ahead.
We had a question come in. They were saying, what would it be for a 16-year-old who suffers from anorexia and depression? I would
Well,
think it'd be illness, but I'm not sure.
so anorexia and depression are mental illnesses. If those have been diagnosed and they have prolonged for a considerable amount of time, there are also specifications that warrant such a diagnosis. So normally you would go through the DSM-5, and you would look like, is this person exhibiting this? Is it exhibiting this? And a lot of times they'll say if they're exhibiting 2 or 3 out of these symptoms, and there may be 5 or 6 symptoms. If you're exhibiting 2 to 3 of these symptoms for a period of 2 weeks or so, then you can be diagnosed with that. So if that individual has been to, a clinician, a therapist, psychologist, psychiatrist, whoever, or the parent or whoever the caregiver is, has seen over a course of time, like especially, I keep using 2 weeks because that's normally the length of time that is used. If that is a consistent they're seeing all these symptoms or behavior patterns or emotional dysfunctions over that time period, definitely you want to get that person to see a professional, but it is safe to say that person is struggling with anorexia and struggling with depression.
Now,
So
in my psychology class, they said mental illness could be also mental disorder, which are the same things. Is that correct?
So yes, now those two I feel like are more interchangeable.
Okay.
I think
That's
where
what I
people
thought.
run it, yeah, I think where people run into issues is interchanging illness and health.
Yes.
And I think that, that's, you can't interchange those, but disorder and illness are interchangeable depending on the dynamic. So a lot of times people will say somebody has a mental illness, or they'll say they have a mental disorder. You know, either
Right.
one is you're saying that there is significant dysfunction, whether emotionally, in their thought process, behavioral, and it's affecting them in relationships, in work, in school, in everyday functioning. That's what, you know, in the illness or disorder has to deal with. Now, with mental health, one of the things that I feel that, you know, like I said, you can have moments when you're not mentally healthy, but you're not mentally ill. So when we talk about being mentally healthy, we, especially from a clinical standpoint, it normally has to do with coping. So if you go to a therapist or a psychologist or whoever, a lot of times the buzzword or the key word is we're going to give you coping mechanisms. We're going to give you
Right.
coping skills. And that is an indication that you're mentally healthy, you know? In addition to that, I feel like, you know, the absence of the dysfunction or the decrease in the dysfunction, then shift that person to say, okay, you know, this person is mentally healthy. Now, where I feel there's an issue with this, you have people that are high functioning.
Okay.
We
Wow.
call them high functioning in depression and anxiety. They can take on quite a bit of stress and still be functioning in different aspects of their lives.
Mhm.
Um, so we have to be careful because, you know, those people could essentially, from outside looking in, look like they're mentally healthy. And that's now the shift from mental health to mental wellness.
Okay.
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 So for me, the key word, just like with mental health, the key word is cope. You give you coping skills to make sure that in different aspects of your life, you're able to function properly. I feel personally that mental wellness and the fact that I'm such a huge advocate and pushing for people to shift more to mental wellness is because mental wellness, I feel, has more to do with a healing, which is a
Okay.
little different from coping. You know, when I feel, you think about like a wound, you know, when something heals, you don't have, there's not a necessity or need to go back and treat it any further, per
Right.
se. There may be a scar from the wound, but the wound isn't open, it's not bleeding, it's not infected, you don't have to like dress it or anything of that sort. I feel like if I could use an analogy regarding mental health and mental wellness, is that mental health is where we kind of put a band-aid on the wound and we
Okay.
cover it, and every time
Kind
it
of like
gets
sweeping it
next,
under the rug.
what'd you say?
Kind of like sweeping it under the rug,
Not
per se.
exactly, but it's, I think, with our understanding or our belief that if we put a band-aid on something and we treat it every now and then and we, you know, help it cope, that it's okay. It's functioning, it's not dysfunctional, it's not, you know, out there, so it's okay. Mental wellness, I feel like that just is more of a holistic idea. And
Hmm.
more importantly, it's a consistent thing.
So like
So
a
go
routine
ahead.
type
Say
thing.
it, say it
For
again.
mental wellness, it's more of a routine. You're doing it on a daily basis to keep your mental health in a
Ex-
positive way.
exactly. And for me, I feel that it's even so much of a routine. It's you being preventative and proactive. Because the reality is, throughout, and this is for everybody, there is no individual on this earth that will not have a moment where they struggle with their mental health,
Right.
myself included. You know, and I've been a therapist for 15 years. There have been moments where I'm like, yeah, my emotions are a little off here, or my thinking is not, or, I'm behavior wise, maybe it's a every individual on this earth will have some kind of challenges or struggles with their mental health at some point in time, where whether it goes left to mental illness or it moves right to mental wellness has to do with consistency and the element of healing from whatever it is, the whether the challenge, the event, the situation, whatever the case may be. And so when I think about mental wellness, like I said, I think about being proactive and preventative. So you have things in place that you do every day. And this is not that you're thinking, oh my gosh, something's going to happen today and it's going to affect me or trigger me or whatever the case may be, but it's a safety plan. It's your mental wellness safety plan for your physical safety, your emotional safety, for you, your self-esteem, your spirituality, everything. So you do whatever those things are every single day to ensure that you are mentally well. Because here's a good example. I had a good friend of mine that went to the doctor the other day, a medical doctor. And they checked everything, what they normally do, your blood pressure, your heart, everything. And they're like, you look like a healthy person. You are very healthy, clean bill of health, blah, blah, blah. She came home and she was like, I feel something in my heart. Like I don't know. I feel like my heart is racing out of, control, whatever the case may be. And she was having a lot of panic attacks that she didn't realize she was having panic attacks. So here she went to a doctor and the doctor says, you are healthy. But then she and I are talking and I said, well, I think that we need to now put something in place to ensure you're mentally well.
Yeah.
So it's not, yes, you could be physically healthy and everything is fine, but if your heart is beating out of control, then we need to figure out something. So then she went to see a specialist and whatever the case would be. So she had COVID. And one of the lingering ramifications of getting COVID is inflammation of the heart. So she's done all these tests, whatever, and, it wasn't until she indicated, she went to a doctor and the doctor, she was like, I had COVID, over a year ago. And the doctor is like, you may have this, I forget the medical term, but you may have inflammation of the heart. So we, as a preventative measure, because a lot of people have died from this thing, let's start taking these medicines so that we reduce the inflammation of the heart. So here's a situation where somebody is told, you're healthy. She's functioning. She's going to work. She feels, relatively good, but she's having this thing in her heart. And so she had to get to a place of being actually well. And I think that's how a lot of times looking at it from a mental health standpoint, you can go to a therapist. And the therapist will tell you, well, you have a good job, you seem like you have a good social life and, all these things. And it seems like you're healthy. There's no indication that you are mentally ill or there's anything to worry about. Said it again?
It's getting down to the root.
Exactly. Right. Yes, it's getting down to the root. Absolutely.
And then I heard you say that when you have if you need mental health help, like from like a therapist, psychologist, that they give you coping mechanisms. Is coping the same thing as grounding?
Grounding is, for me, I feel like if you're really doing grounding exercises, they are a form of healing as opposed to just coping.
Okay.
I feel like a lot of times coping mechanisms are just like, they are the Band-Aid. They're the things we give people to kind of help them not go to the left. So we don't want, so a coping mechanism could be medication.
Okay.
We use quite a bit. It's like to help somebody be bipolar and their moods are like swinging. So we give them, gosh, what was it used to be the famous bipolar medication? I can't think of it right now. Um, Anyhow, you give them some bipolar medication and it helps stabilizes them, and that's a cope. It helps them to cope. They cope with it, but
Okay.
it doesn't necessarily. It's not a mental wellness plan or
Okay.
tactic, because think of coping things as things that you're dependent on, and if you ever stop what of those things are, then you actually fall back into the space that you were. As opposed, for me, mental wellness is there isn't this fear that if I don't use this thing, I will fall back into it. It's like it's a part of your life. It's what you do on a daily basis. So I honestly don't feel like coping and grounding are the same thing, but I know that a lot of people think that way.
Okay. So we got a question.
Sure.
Um, so I'll read it. I find that since my trauma, some friends or family have a hard time engaging normally with me. They
Okay.
act awkward, and it enhances the emotion, depression, sadness. How can I address this? It messes with my mental health.
Okay, so let me be clear as to what the question is. So this person had a traumatic event happen,
Hmm.
and because of that traumatic event, family and friends treat them differently.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
That's what
and is
I.
and is the question that they want things to kind of be normal in engagement and in relationships? What is the exact question so that I'm clear?
How can I address this? So I think they want to be forward with them,
Okay.
but
Okay.
that's gonna be hard, I feel like.
So I think it
Excuse
goes
me, why
back
are
to
you acting weird around me?
it goes back to those three pillars that I used to when we first started working together that I told you about. The three pillars of trauma healing have to do with physical and emotional safety, establishing that, self-regulation or co-regulation, and then the third one is empowerment. So involved in that pillar of empowerment is assertiveness. It's so interesting that this person asked this question because earlier today I was talking to someone dear to me about how there are four types of, I don't know what to call them, but the way we interact or with people, it's passive, assertive, aggressive, or passive aggressive. And
Yeah, I
so
learned that.
what'd you say?
I learned that in my first college class in high school.
Yeah.
I
So
remember that.
yep. And so one of the things I used to tell you all the time as a trauma survivor is that you have to find a way, and it takes time and you have to be gentle with yourself, is moving into the space. And it's not even just trauma survivors, it's anybody. We have to be a bit more assertive in our communication and relating to people. So, and doing that is sometimes it requires setting some boundaries or explaining expectations or
Mhm.
just asking for what you need. So, for that individual that asked the question, one of the things I would say is if you don't feel emotionally safe in your relationships with people, it's going to be difficult for you to be assertive in your relationship and feel
Right.
empowered to ask for what you need. So I can't honestly give you sound advice without knowing more of the details. Specifically, are these relationships you're talking about, these people you're around, do you feel emotionally safe with them? So it sounds like you don't, because it sounds like this person is saying, I don't feel comfortable saying, like, hey, I don't want you to treat me any differently because of this event. It's something that happened, but it's not a definition of who I am. But
Mhm.
again, that takes time and it
Right.
takes practice, um, and it takes healing, and it takes going through the motions, like I said, the three pillars. And I don't know where that person is in their healing journey. So I'm a little hesitant to say do this and this will work
Right.
because I don't know the full spectrum of their situation.
Oh, that's good to know. See, she's honest, everybody. She's not going to go across the
Well,
line.
well, I mean, I have to be. I mean, one of the things
Right.
I feel like that has really helped me in my relationships with people that I've worked with is that they know what to expect and they know what they're going to get and they know they're going to get the truth.
Right.
And it's not always going to be pretty and it's not always going to be comfortable, but it's going to be the truth. And you know, obviously I want to be tactful and gentle in the delivery of the truth, but nevertheless the truth of the situation. And then just, you know, again, when the whole concept again, and this is something that I'm so passionate about right now, have been, but right now especially, is that I just really want people to be mentally well. I don't want them to feel like they're just one event, one trigger, one thing from slipping back into, you know, my whole life is falling apart or some form of mental illness or the mental health struggles are just, you know, overwhelming.
Now I
It
have a question. Oh,
Go
sorry.
ahead. Mm-hmm.
Is there a difference between sorry, I gotta get them all. Mental wellness and mental well-being? Are those two interchangeable or are they different?
So you can say that in some definitions of mental health, you could say somebody's in a state of well-being.
Okay.
In mental wellness, definitely you can say somebody's in a state of well-being. So that one is a little tricky
Okay.
because that element of well-being um, is it depends on the individual. It depends
Okay.
on perspective, culture, you know, many different things. So I wouldn't say they're interchangeable. I think it's a word that can be integrated in the definition for mental health or mental wellness.
Okay. Okay. Because I was watching something and they were talking about how their mental well-being. I'm like, I'm wondering, is it the same? Do they know the difference? Stuff
Mm-hmm.
like that. So I thought I'd bring it up
Yeah.
for clarification.
Well, I mean, for me, obviously you have the word wellness and well-being. So, you know, if we were really trying, being very technical with the word, you know, when you say somebody's mental well-being, is that in every aspect of their lives that there is, they're well in their functioning.
Mm-hmm.
Um, And so when I even think being, it's like however they're being, whether it's in school or at work or at home, that there's an element of wellness to it.
Okay.
Meaning that there's an element of resilience, there's an element of stability, there's an element of awareness, high awareness, and proactivity. And again, when I think of mental wellness, I don't want people to just get stuck from it's just having to do with your mind. It
Right.
encompasses any area of your life that you can think of. That's what mental wellness encompasses. In some instances, people will say that mental health also does that in all areas of your life. But again, I think the key thing is coping versus healing. So have you kind of healed from those things or continuing to heal? Because sometimes it's not a linear event, it's a circular event. But again, do you have things in place to ensure that you are staying mentally well so that if you get triggered, you have an
Right.
awareness of it, you have all the things that you do to kind of bring yourself to a place of calm and stability or whatever the case may be, as opposed to it disrupts you, um, and then you're trying to find the coping ways to kind of, or lingers for days or for weeks from that one trigger.
Right. Right. Kind of like the movie thing that we talked about last week, how it could trigger someone and then it doesn't hit you until a week or even longer later.
Yes. Yep. It's so interesting. Now, there's a friend of mine that I'm going to be talking to on Tuesday's transformation next month about that, about the way that we tell stories.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes, the documentaries, the real life stories, or inspired by, or true stories, Hollywood, or it's fictional, however you want to look at it. But in our storytelling, we are not thinking about the audience.
No.
And how, yes, somebody heard about this movie, it's getting all these great reviews, and you go and watch it, and it's like, I call it, what is that game where like all the lights kind of go boom, 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 boom. Like, I don't know if it's some kind of arcade game. And like
Simon
you hit
Says.
something. Huh?
Simon Says.
No, it's like an arcade game. I can't remember. I may be old fashioned, maybe a long years ago, and it may not be current.
I play cards, so I don't know.
But it's a game where if you hit it, like you get it right or something, all the lights go off. And I feel like sometimes, and I've talked to clients where they're like, they watch the movie and it was just trigger, 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 trigger. So like all these things were triggered in them. And then they left the movie theater and they have all these things have come up. And then what do? And then maybe you have work, maybe you have school, and you're just now in this state that you don't know what to do. So it's, even like you said, watching the movies does, trigger people. And again, that could mess with your mental health.
Yeah,
But it
because that
doesn't
happened to
necessarily,
me recently.
yeah, it doesn't mean that you're mentally ill. you
Right.
know you know when we get triggered, a lot of times people are like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm mentally ill, and I'm like, not quite. You
Yeah.
got triggered, and it's probably you're struggling mental health wise, but doesn't mean that you have a mental illness.
Yeah, because I was watching the show and it's all good and everything, and then this one episode comes, and you know how on the top it usually says like a trigger warning of certain things, so like it'll say sex, language, and all that. Well, this
Right,
one
right,
had
right.
nothing,
Uh-huh.
and I was watching it, and there was a rape scene, and so which
Wow.
is a trigger for me. So it and it happened so fast, and so of course my mom fast forwarded, we turned it off, and everything like that, but. Um, Even with me doing my grounding exercises and stuff, I'm getting nightmares and
Mhm.
stuff. So I'm working through that right now. But yeah, that's why trigger warnings are so important. Um, and to understand between mental health and mental wellness, to watch yourself and your shows.
Let me ask you this. Did you, with this being triggered in this way,
Mhm.
unknownly, and a lot of times it happens very unexpectedly, unknowingly, did you feel, or actually, even let's go back, prior to us meeting, did you feel you were mentally ill?
Prior to us meeting in 2019, or
Yes. Like prior
mentally
to us
ill?
working together, did you feel you were mentally ill?
Um, no, I mean, I know they diagnosed me with PTSD and all that, but I, I, I didn't, I don't think I felt like it because I didn't want it to be a mental illness.
Okay. So they did give you that diagnosis. So let me ask you this, like, do you even now, because I think that's what you're alluding to, that there's this event that happened, a very horrific, traumatic event happened to you, um, that doesn't define who you are.
Right.
Um, but every now and then, depending on things that are happening or you watch something, you get triggered. and it affects you struggle from a mental health standpoint because you are trying to cope.
Right. Yes.
Okay. So as we started to work together, one of the things, I mean, you've heard me say this a lot of times, that I want you to heal, but I mean, I also want that to be what you want, as opposed to, but I also know that you have been exposed to more conventional therapy for so long, and that's what we did. And I did a post of this last week or so about just, we have to redefine ourselves outside of these diagnoses. And like I said, I feel like this is a totally other session or conversation we need to have about these diagnoses that everybody embodies, and they make it like this is who they are, and it becomes their identity. And everyone says, I have PTSD. And I'm like, okay, so you have symptoms as a result of a traumatic event. Absolutely. But they're not always there, but they do come. However, even with that just concept, I've never thought of you as mentally ill. Neither have I said, I don't think I've ever said, oh, you have PTSD. I don't think I've ever said that.
He had me take the test for depression, but not PTSD. It was another doctor.
Right. Yeah, and even with the assessments, I tell people all the time, if I do an assessment on you, it's not a definite, it's like, I want you not to focus on the assessment as much as I'm looking at it as a way of, I want to know the severity of where you are in the depression or the anxiety or whatever symptoms you're going through, or the stress. I did do a stress test on you. But in doing all of that is to figure out, how do we shift into a place of mental wellness? How do we, how do I journey with you and equip you with whatever tools you may need to heal? Because I always tell you, you're the expert. I'm just, you're in the driver's seat. I'm in the passenger seat. I will never know you as well as you know yourself, because I'm not in your thoughts. I'm not in your emotions. It's only what you tell me. And with that, I have to trust and know that the wise individual that you are, with the right support, it will kick in and, help you through that journey. So yeah, I think even just that concept of, like you said, mental illness, mental health, and how people are like, I have this, I am depressed. And I'm like, okay, so I'm not going to use those words with you, but I understand, when people say that, I understand what they're saying, but then it's even getting them to shift from the box. Because I feel like we put ourselves in these boxes. It reminds me of something I tell my son all the time. I'm like, I want you to color outside the lines.
That would drive me crazy. Oh, what? That's almost as bad as when you told me to take mental health days for 3 days.
Oh, I know. I mean, but look at you now. Look at what, now because again, my idea is, it's not just, okay, we're working together and we're dealing with this for this moment. I'm looking 5, 10, 15, 20, the rest of your life. Like, whatever it is needs to sustain you for the rest of your life. It's not just this moment. And I think that's sometimes how we get stuck. And, other people that clients or whoever we're working with, we get them stuck too, because we're just thinking like right here, and we're thinking inside this box. And I'm like, let's, color outside the lines, and, and see what we find there.
Right, yeah. Well, because sometimes when I'm out with Kaya, my service dog, people are like, what's wrong with you? And stuff like that. I'm like, well, first off, none of your business, but they want to put you in that box to know why you have a certain thing.
Yes, yes. And it's, but the other thing you guys, I mean, I tell people now, and people, I use this even in raising my son, is that all behavior is a form of communication.
Mm-hmm.
So, if somebody, if we're quick to label somebody or quick to say, oh, this person has this, as opposed to connecting, yeah, listen, love, connect,
Yeah.
and when we connect with people, we can get a better understanding that it's not so much, again, we're getting to the root of the thing instead of just symptoms. A lot of times I feel like in the mental health field, we're dealing with symptoms. We're treating symptoms as opposed to the root, because it's so much easier to just deal with the symptoms than to get to the root of something. It's like a home cooked meal versus a microwave meal.
Right.
It's
Or
like, go ahead.
I was going to say it's easier to clean up the mess on top and shove everything away, but when you look into there, it's going to be a mess,
Yes.
and
And
you're
that,
not helping.
no. And the other thing that I've realized, and I've seen from a lot of people that have come to me, they've had therapy before, and then they've come to me, is they look at this, and the reality is whatever we suppress comes up.
Yep.
A week later, 2 weeks later, a year later, 5, 10 years later, I have people that, I had a 60-year-old woman that was like, I thought I was good. There's an event that happened to her when she was 16. She's 60. And now she's struggling from a mental health standpoint because everything was suppressed. And so for me, I look at it as like, the more comfortable we get with just slowly dealing with these things,
Yeah.
whatever they may be. And it could be something minor. It doesn't always have to be this big, huge event. It could be just something minor, but we have to normalize dealing with them instead
Yeah.
of distracting ourselves, suppressing the, emotions or thoughts, running,
Body keeps
ignoring.
score.
Huh? What'd you
That's
say?
because the body keeps score.
Yes. Yes. The body keeps score, the emotional brain especially. Everything comes back to the brain. It keeps account of
Yep.
everything. So, and it doesn't until the beauty of the brain, it's neuroplastic. We have the ability, depending on what we're doing, to rewire our brains and different, neurotransmitters. I won't get too technical here. But at the end of the day, you know, every little bit hack counts. Every little bit, is
Right.
helpful. And that's why tell people all the time, is like, take it slow, day by
Yes.
day, be gentle with yourself, but
Yep.
do something on a daily basis for your mental wellness and your mental health.
And that's what you're doing with your yoga, right? Every night?
Oh, yes. So I have been practicing, I started practicing yoga in 2002. And interesting enough, when I started practicing yoga, it wasn't for mental health purposes or mental wellness purposes. I was a runner. I was a marathon runner for a long time. I used to run. I would go for like 5, 10 mile runs every day. But I was running on pavement. And my knees, I mean, I was in my 20s. I think I was like 22 or 23 at that time. And my knees started like really hurting and getting inflamed, because that's what happens when you run on pavement. It's, they tell you,
Yeah.
run on sand or, run on something softer. And I just couldn't get the pain out of it. And I remember my brother, Kirby, he used to live in New York, was like, he started doing yoga. So I started reading up about it. And anything I do, I really research about. I really find out what is the benefit for me. And what I realized was that yoga was therapy. It wasn't, and back then it wasn't what it is now. It wasn't this thing that everybody talks about. Actually, everybody was like, if you're doing yoga, you're worshiping the devil or something like that.
Oh my God. Wow,
Oh
that
no, I'm
took
not
a
kidding you.
turn.
I'm like, I'm not kidding you. But yoga, when I researched the history of yoga and everything about yoga, I realized that the original intent was therapeutic because it hits your mind, your body, and your spirit simultaneously. And so, but in that moment, I was like, I can't run anymore because this is really hurting. So I'm going to try yoga. And that's how I came into doing yoga. And, you know, what is it, like 16 or more years later now? Not too more. But now, then I think it was in 2010, when I decided I wanted to become a trauma specialist, I started reading up about Dr. Bessel von Kolk and somatic types of therapy and mindfulness. And I said, I wonder if I could use yoga with my trauma.
And you did.
So
I was in proud pose.
so I actually started a program for children
Oh,
using
no.
yoga to help, like, gosh, this was 10, 11 years ago. In Richmond, Virginia, I started a wellness program for children using yoga to help them through anxiety, ADHD, depression, trauma. And I just saw the change. It wasn't even just me seeing the change. The kids were saying the change, you know, talking about the change, and their parents were talking about the change. So for me, and anything that I suggest to my clients, I do personally. It's part of my wellness program. So it's not me just telling you stuff that I think, oh, just do this because this is what it's really about. Okay, I know this is going to work. And for some people, you have to tweak it. Like, for instance, you know, with several of the things that I suggested to you, you're like, yeah, so me, that doesn't work for me.
Or I called her up crying, please help me. She's like, why didn't you tell me that? I'm like, I don't know.
So no, but yeah, yoga really, the therapeutic benefits of yoga are not talked about enough. And I can't emphasize it enough as a practitioner, and then for what, you know, the effect or the results I've seen with my clients. So yeah, my bedtime yoga, I even use it with my son. We used to do morning and nighttime yoga, and it literally, for people that have insomnia, that deal with a lot of insomnia or just inability to fall asleep or stay asleep or any kind of sleep disturbances. Just
We might have you
yoga
on Wellness
flows.
Wednesday then.
What'd you say?
We might have you on Wellness Wednesday then for yoga.
Well, no, I highly suggest it. I can, and I know that some people that have very strong Christian values or beliefs may, but I say you don't have to do the meditation part. You don't have to do any chanting. There are all the different types of yoga. You don't have to include any of these things that you think are non-Christian. But I can definitely say the movement of your body and the breath combination, because really the word yoga is the union of the breath and the body and the spirit and coming all together. I can't emphasize that enough as a therapeutic measure. It's as good as your breath. Your breath is your number one medicine. Yoga, I think maybe is the second medicine. That
well,
you don't
I have
have to take
something for a surprise that might be added to that.
What you mean? Say it again. I could hear you.
I have a sneak peek to add to yoga and the mental health.
Oh, yes.
Explain it. So I can explain all of it. You could explain the features, and then I'll let you put the sound to the. Okay, so I can explain the features. I've just been told. My mom's right here. Who's my partner?
You have to tell the audience what it is.
Yes. Oh, yes. Okay. So this is an exceptional hero. So not only are my real animals exceptional heroes, but we formed them into a therapeutic device. So this is Monroe. So I'm going to show you the therapeutic benefits of it. So he is completely distributed with deep pressure therapy. He has beads in him that help with deep pressure therapy, evenly distributed. He is 4 pounds. In his back paws, he has stress balls to help with fidgets, or we have been told now that it could be used for strokes, people who have strokes for PT. Mm-hmm. We then have right here Velcro as another fidget. Someone has sensory input. For sensory input, sorry, she's helping me because I'm so nervous. I'm not used to this part. Or skin picking like myself. Yep. And then it has a safety feature. So because it's Velcro, it can stick to everything. So we put a safety feature for a glove. And it's minky. All of it is sensor friendly. Mm-hmm. Right here we have a 100% wool collar for aromatherapy. So it's a natural diffuser that you can put essential oils on. It's a natural diffuser to put essential oils on. So, and then in his head, I'll show you with the 8 pound. So this is the 8 pound. This is Shelby. That's the carrying case. This is his carrying case. So this is sold separately to hold. And it has pockets. And on the side, he has another pocket and then has a card slip thing for ID or you know how they have like medical cards and all that? Mm-hmm. So they have that. And then he's humongous. But he's 8 pounds total, or not total, but in deep pressure therapy. But in his head, we have a hidden zipper that opens up, and and it has a sound box, and we made our own sound for controlled breathing, and it's 4 in, 8 out. Yes. What do you think, Somi? And everyone can comment.
Well, I'm so excited to actually see the actual prototypes because, this has been 2 years in the making and, being a part of, the process of, all these different things and seeing the drawings and everything. I cannot wait for this to get out and people to get a hold of this and what I can say to the audience, like seriously, yes, you have your breath.
Yes.
You have yoga, and then you have exceptional heroes.
Yes. You don't have to feed it.
Yeah, and the beauty of exceptional heroes, it encompasses almost every therapeutic or healing aspect all in one place. So, whether it's the breathing, so the sound box that gives you the 4 and the 8, which, by the way, most people don't do the 4 and the 8, which is highly therapeutic. Most people do 4 and 4, or they do 4, 7, 8. And, the exceptional hero is probably, don't quote me, but I think one of the only therapeutic devices is going to have the 4 and 8. And I guarantee you, if you do the 4, 8, you'll be out like this. It's so relaxing. And again, even creating that sound and creating the most therapeutic, soothing sound for that, makes it phenomenal. So it's not some borrowed sound, if you will.
Right. Yep.
The touch of it, the feel of it, the weight for people that have anxiety and, you have those weighted blankets, you can now sleep and have, everybody likes to cuddle. I tell people all the time, it's like we teach children, sleep by yourself but have this stuffed animal, but the stuffed animal doesn't feel heavy enough. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's not weighted enough for kids that have any kind of sensory issues or anxiety or whatever the case may be. But the weightiness of this helps with that. It feels like a weighted blanket. What else did I talk? I mean, the feel of it for those people that have stress or stroke, you're touching it. So you get this in, and it's portable. You can carry it with you. And look how cute they are. For all the audience. Like Monroe is my favorite, just because I think Monroe is the one that I met first, the real life
Yes.
Monroe. But
Yes.
Shelby is equally cute. But gosh, there's something about Monroe and those eyes. Can everybody look at the eyes?
We designed the eyes ourselves.
Right.
Everything.
And that's the other thing
I mean, everything we did, but like we didn't copy from anybody for the eyes.
Yes. So Exceptional Heroes is an original. It's, you know, the detail that has been put into the creation of these therapeutic animals is one of a kind. And
4 of the 5 senses in it.
right. And I'm not just saying this because, you know, I've been a part of the process, or I'm, you know, Savannah's therapist. As a therapist, and I told her, when she, even before the creation of all of this, when the idea came up, do you remember what I told you?
Don't send that letter to the other company I was going to. She said, stop! Don't do
but
that.
I also said that it was pure genius. I told Savannah, I listened to it and everything, and I was like, there's nothing else like it out there right now. And it's so needed. And we didn't know how much it was even going to be needed, because COVID hadn't
it wasn't there yet.
Yeah, but still, when we look at like 1 in 4 adults, and now 1 in 4 children have a mental illness, not, you know,
Right.
that's, you know, this product is
for everybody. I mean,
not,
you don't have to have a mental illness or mental health issues. So, and then we also found out that our bells, because of how we designed them, it helps with tinnitus.
Or no,
So,
if you suffer from tinnitus, you could actually hear the bells because of the running water that counteracts the sound.
So, did you hear that?
I heard it, and I
Okay,
that.
I'll rephrase it. So, those who have tinnitus, it's, I don't know if anyone knows what tinnitus is, but tinnitus is when you hear all the time, and there's no cure for it. But because of the way we designed the bells, it counteracts the water that we put into it to help you listen to the bells. So someone very close to me has it, and when I would put on the bells that you showed me, she never could hear it. But when we put on the bells that we made, she was able to hear the bells and actually breathe to it.
All right, can you show, I mean, again, I can't rave enough about Exceptional Heroes, and I can't wait till it gets on the market for everybody, because I mean, you already know this, but there's several of my clients that I'm like, I've already told them, I'm like, okay, so you're going to be testing this out. You'll be one of my test people, so that, you know, we're testing it, you know, we're really getting other people to use it and, you know, give their honest opinion about it. So this isn't just about me or Savannah or her mother who's talking in the background.
Sorry, I'm not camera ready like you beautiful women.
Yeah, no, we know. But we want to acknowledge you because it has been a joint effort. Long hours, a lot of hours.
Yes, a lot.
Conversations.
A lot of yoga.
But a lot of laughter too, a lot of joy, a lot of sweat, a lot of crying, a lot of episodes.
Yep, that's me. That was horrible.
But in all of that, a lot of mental health breaks and a lot of growth.
Yes.
And in all honesty, these animals have been tested on me during those episodes.
Yes.
Yesterday, I took it to a special needs teacher to test it out. He loved them. I am getting my neurologist who specializes in migraines and seizures to test them out to see if it would help those. But right now, they can help everyone. But the special cases would be autism, trauma, Alzheimer's. We found out for Alzheimer's, for PT, anxiety. I mean, that's just to name a few.
Yeah.
But we're filming tomorrow for Kickstarter with these guys. We thought we would share them on here. So stay tuned. Yeah. I was going to say keep watching till the end, but this would have been in the beginning part. So, oh, and another note: the aromatherapy, or for the aromatherapy for the collars, we made our own scent, so that's also original. It's called Connect, and it's a mood balancer.
Doesn't get any better than that. Doesn't get any better than that. So for everybody watching today and anybody else that will watch, the recorded version, again, the concept or the idea is mental wellness. This device is not just for mental illness or mental health. It's also for mental wellness. So you could be, your life is great. You're not really having any issues. But this is something that you could use with your children or yourself or who have grandparents, and just have it as an addition to your mental wellness. So we're not boxing exceptional heroes in. It covers all of it: mental illness, mental health, as well as mental wellness.
Yes.
So thank you guys.
Yes, thank you for watching, and then always remember to listen, love, connect.
Yay!
Yay!
Can't wait to meet you guys in person.
Yes.
Right.
By the way, me and Tommy have never met in person, but we both love each other.
Oh my gosh, yeah, I know. We forgot to mention that. But that's the story of my life. I know a lot of people, and some of us we've never met in person, but we connect.
Yes.
Love is real. All right, bye everyone.
Bye. Love you, Tommy.
Bye. Love you too.